The lecture hall was quiet as Dr. Taeyang Choi stood before his students. He was a young man with tired eyes, the kind that came from reading too many history books. Behind him, a holographic display showed Earth as it looked 400 years ago before the aliens came. Humanity has been part of the Galactic Council for 423 years, he said. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it. Something bitter. We call it the Age of Courtesy. Does anyone know why? A student raised her hand. Because we were polite? Taeyang smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Because we had no choice. He pressed a button and the display changed. It showed a massive alien ship hovering over New York City. The year was 2424. First contact. Humanity had been so excited. They weren't alone in the universe. But that excitement didn't last long. The Galactic Council gave us a choice, Taeyang continued. Join them and follow their rules or stay isolated and alone. We joined. We signed the courtesy protocols. We agreed to limit our military, our expansion, our right to defend ourselves. They told us it was for galactic peace. Another student spoke up. But that was a good thing, right? No more wars? Taeyang's expression darkened. No more wars for us. But plenty of wars happened to us. He showed them images. Human colonies abandoned because the council said they belonged to someone else. Human ships destroyed by pirates while human warships were forbidden to respond. Human miners killed on distant asteroids while the council did nothing. 400 years of being pushed around, stepped on, and ignored. We were told to be patient, Taeyang said. To be courteous. To wait for justice. We waited for 4 centuries. Across the galaxy, on the bridge of the UES Steadfast Resolve, Captain Daewon Kim stared at the orders on his screen. His ship was one of Earth's defensive cruisers, which was a nice way of saying the council didn't let them build anything better. Or so the council thought. Daewon was in his mid-40s with gray starting to show in his hair. He'd spent his entire career following rules that didn't make sense, watching his people suffer while he could do nothing. The orders on his screen were simple. Proceed to the Kepler sector. 3 human colonies were under threat. The Vthric Dominion had declared those colonies theirs. The Vthric were a reptilian species that had been bullying smaller civilizations for thousands of years. They were arrogant, powerful, and the Council's favorite. Whatever the Vthric wanted, the Vthric got. Sir, we're approaching New Busousan, his first officer said. Daewon looked at the screen. New Busousan was a beautiful planet, home to 4 million humans. It had cities, farms, schools. Children played in the parks. Families lived their lives. And now Vthric warships hung in orbit like vultures. His communications officer looked up. Captain, the Vthric are broadcasting. Should I put it on screen? Do it. A Vthric commander appeared on the screen. His scales were dark green and his eyes showed nothing but contempt. Human vessel, you will leave this system. These worlds belong to the Dominion now. The Council has already ruled in our favor. Daewon kept his voice steady. Our people are still on that planet. We're here to evacuate them. The Council gave us 90 days, the Vthric laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding together. Your people are trespassing. They leave now. Or they don't leave at all. The screen went dark. On Earth, in the Grand Hall of Humanity's government, Ambassador Hana Lee stood before a video screen showing the Galactic Council. She was 60 years old and had spent 30 of those years dealing with the Council's politics. She'd begged, negotiated, compromised, and sacrificed. She'd gotten nothing but empty promises in return. Honored Council members, she said, keeping her voice respectful. It made her sick, but she did it anyway. Humanity has been peaceful for over 4 centuries. We've followed every rule, accepted every judgment. We're asking for your help now. The Vthric claim to these colonies is false. We have proof of human settlement dating back 200 years. We have... One of the council members and floating jellyfish-like creature interrupted her. Ambassador Lee, the council has reviewed the evidence. The Vthric have historical precedent. The matter is settled. Your colonies will be relocated. But they're attacking our people. Hana's composure cracked. They're not waiting for the 90 days. They're firing on civilians right now. Then your people should evacuate faster, another council member said. This session is concluded. The screen went black. Hana stood there, shaking. Behind her, a door opened. Admiral Jiwoo Park walked in. She was a tall woman in her late 50s, wearing the uniform of Earth's military. Her face was hard as stone. They said no, Hana whispered. I know. Jiwoo walked to the window, looking up at the stars. I've been listening. Hana, how long have we been friends? 28 years. In those 28 years, how many times have you asked the Council for justice? Hana didn't need to count. Hundreds. And how many times did they give it to you? Never. Jiwoo turned around. I need your permission. As Earth's ambassador, you can withdraw us from the courtesy protocols. It requires your authorization. Hana felt her heart racing. If I do that, it means war. It means we stop letting them walk on us. It means we fight back. They'll destroy us. The entire galaxy will come down on Earth. Jiwoo smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. Let them try. Back on the steadfast resolve, alarms were blaring. The Vthos weren't waiting. They'd opened fire on the evacuation centers on New Busan's surface. Thousands of humans were dead. More were dying every second. Sir, requesting permission to engage, his weapons officer shouted. Daewon opened a channel to Fleet Command. Admiral Park requesting permission to defend our people. There was a long pause. Then Jiwoo's voice came through. Permission denied, Captain. Stand by. Admiral, they're slaughtering civilians. I know, stand by. Daewon slammed his fist on the armrest. His crew looked at him, anger and frustration on their faces. They had weapons. They had the ability to fight. But they had orders not to. Then, 5 minutes later, a new transmission came through. It wasn't just to the steadfast resolve. It was broadcast to every human ship in the galaxy. It was broadcast to the Galactic Council. It was broadcast to every alien civilization that had spent 4 centuries thinking humanity was weak. Ambassador Hana Lee's face appeared on every screen. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. This is Ambassador Hana Lee speaking for the people of Earth and all human colonies. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the courtesy protocols and all associated treaties with the Galactic Council. We thank the Council for 423 years of lessons in galactic politics. We've learned exactly how the galaxy works. Earth's courtesy ends today, the transmission ended. Another one began immediately. Admiral Jiwoo Park's face filled the screen. She was speaking to every human military vessel. All ships, this is Fleet Command. Protocol Restriction Omega is lifted. All artificial limitations on your vessels are now removed. All hidden systems are now active. Rules of engagement are as follows. There are none. Defend our people. Protect our worlds. Show them what we've been building while they thought we were sleeping. On the bridge of the steadfast resolve, Daewon Kim felt his ship change. Systems he'd never been allowed to access came online. Weapons that weren't supposed to exist powered up. His defensive cruiser transformed into something else entirely. He looked at his weapons officer. Target those Vthos ships. All of them. Sir, there are 47 enemy vessels. I know. This won't take long. Fire when ready. The officer smiled. It was the first real smile Daewon had seen on his crew in years. With pleasure, sir. The Battle of New Busan was about to begin. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's courtesy had never been weakness. It had been patience. And that patience had just run out. The Vthos commander barely had time to register what was happening. One moment he was watching the pathetic human cruiser sitting in orbit, doing nothing while his forces massacred the colony below. The next moment his flagship was burning. Report! He screamed at his crew. Unknown weapons fire. The human ship, it's not what we thought. Shields are down to 40%. The human ship moved like nothing the Vthos had ever seen. It was fast, impossibly fast. And the weapons pouring from it weren't the limited defensive systems the Council allowed. These were weapons of war. On the steadfast resolve, Captain Daewon Kim watched his tactical display with satisfaction. His ship's real weapons were finally unleashed. 400 years of pretending to be weak were over. Hyun-soo, deploy your fighters, he ordered. Commander Hyun-soo Jung had been waiting her entire career for this order. She was 31 years old and had trained in simulators that the Council didn't know existed. She and her pilots had practiced combat maneuvers that the galaxy thought were impossible. All wings launch, she called. From hidden bays in the steadfast resolve, 200 fighters erupted into space. They didn't fly in the standard formations that galactic militaries used. They moved in 3 dimensions, using gravitational fields as slingshots, creating patterns that confused enemy targeting systems. The Vthos tried to respond, but their ships were designed for the kind of slow, formal warfare that the galaxy had fought for thousands of years. Humanity's fighters moved like sharks in water, fast and deadly. Enemy flagship is trying to escape, the tactical officer reported. Don't let it. Daewon's voice was cold. Minji, show them what our main guns can really do. Engineer Minji Kwan smiled. She'd helped design these weapons, had hidden them inside what looked like standard defensive systems. Now she got to use them. Firing main cannon. The blast from the steadfast resolve lit up space. It punched through the Vthric flagship's shields like they weren't even there. The massive alien warship broke apart in a ball of fire. Across the galaxy, every species with sensors pointed at the Kepler sector stopped what they were doing and stared at their screens. The battle was being broadcast, though the humans hadn't meant for it to be. The Vthric had been recording, thinking they would show the galaxy how they crushed the weak humans. Instead, they were broadcasting their own destruction. In the Galactic Council chambers, the council members watched in growing horror. The human ship was tearing through the Vthric fleet like it was made of paper. 47 Vthric warships, each one a capital vessel, were being destroyed by a single human cruiser and its fighters. "This is impossible," one council member whispered. "Humans don't have this kind of technology." Councillor Vthos, an elder species representative who had always been wary of humanity, spoke quietly. "They've had it all along. We just never let them show us." The battle lasted 12 minutes. 47 Vthric ships entered orbit around New Busousan. 47 Vthric ships were destroyed. The human cruiser hadn't suffered a scratch, but the naval battle was only part of it. On the planet's surface, General Sung Ho Bei watched the Vthric ground forces from orbit. They'd been slaughtering civilians, thinking the humans had no way to respond. They were wrong. "All drop pods launch," he ordered. The Vthric soldiers on the ground heard a sound like thunder. They looked up and saw hundreds of metal pods falling from the sky. The pods didn't slow down. They didn't need to. They hit the ground at terminal velocity, and armored humans exploded out of them, weapons firing. The Vthric had never seen combat like this. Galactic ground warfare was slow, methodical. Humans fought like demons. They moved fast, struck hard, and showed no mercy to those who had murdered civilians. A Vthric officer tried to surrender. General Sung Ho stood over him, armor still smoking from re-entry. "You killed 4,000 of our people in evacuation centers," Sung Ho said quietly. "You shot children. You fired on hospitals. No, you don't get to surrender yet. First you run." The Vthric looked confused. "What?" "Run. Tell your commanders what's coming for them. Tell them that humanity is done being courteous." The Vthric ran, and behind him he heard human laughter. Cold, cruel laughter from a species that had been gentle for so long that everyone forgot they knew how to be anything else. Dr. Tae-Yang Choi watched the battle recordings with his students. They sat in shocked silence as human military might was revealed to the galaxy. When it was over, he stood and addressed not just his class but the entire galaxy. His lecture was being broadcast on every network. "For 423 years, humanity followed the courtesy protocols," he said. "The galaxy thought we did this because we were peaceful, because we were weak, because we didn't know how to fight. Let me tell you what we really were doing." He brought up displays showing human military academies, hidden shipyards, classified research facilities. We were studying every battle in our history, every war, every conflict. We learned from them all. While the galaxy fought wars like diplomatic meetings with guns, we remembered what real war looks like. We remembered that war isn't about honor or glory. It's about winning. He showed footage of human Marines training in secret facilities. "We trained every single day for 400 years. We built weapons the Council didn't know about. We designed ships that looked weak but were deadly. We created tactics the galaxy had never seen because you've been civilized so long you forgot how to really fight." The broadcast reached the Vthric homeworld. High Command Vthos watched the destruction of his fleet and felt something he hadn't felt in centuries: fear. But fear quickly turned to rage. How dare these primitive apes humiliate the Vthric dominion? "Mobilize the entire war fleet," he ordered. "Every ship. I want 3,000 vessels ready to depart for human space. We will crush them. We will reduce their worlds to ash. We will teach them what happens when you challenge the Dominion." His subordinates rushed to carry out the orders. Within hours, the largest Vthric fleet in a century was assembling. 3,000 warships ready for genocide. Admiral Jiwoo Park received the intelligence report on her flagship, the UES Indomitable. She read it calmly, then opened a channel to the Vthric Dominion. She made sure every species in the galaxy could hear her message. "High Command Vthos, we are aware of your fleet mobilization. We know you're gathering 3,000 ships to attack human worlds. We're giving you 96 hours to reconsider. After that, we're coming to your homeworld. This is not a courtesy. This is a warning. Evacuate your civilians. What happened at New Busousan was us being gentle. You don't want to see us when we're serious. The message ended. Across the galaxy, the reaction was immediate. Some species were terrified. Others were angry. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. 3 council members demanded immediate action against humanity. Others argued for caution. We need to understand what we're dealing with, Councillor Vthos said. For 4 centuries, we've underestimated them. We thought they were weak because they didn't fight back. We were wrong. They have a few advanced ships, another council member scoffed. That doesn't make them a threat to the entire galaxy. You're still not understanding, Vthos said quietly. They spent 400 years studying us, learning our weaknesses, building in secret. That battle at New Busousan? That was 1 ship, 1. How many ships do you think they really have? The council chamber fell silent. No one knew the answer, and that terrified them. In human space, ships were moving. Not just military vessels, but civilian ships too. Because in humanity's greatest secret, every civilian vessel had military capabilities hidden inside. Every cargo hauler was also a carrier. Every transport ship was also a gunship. Every mining station was also a fortress. The galaxy had spent 4 centuries thinking they knew humanity. They were about to learn they didn't know anything at all. Captain Daewon Kim stood on his bridge looking at the star charts. The Vthric homeworld was highlighted in red. His ship had just finished repairs, minor ones barely worth mentioning. They'd destroyed 47 enemy ships and hadn't taken real damage. Helm, plot a course for Vthos Prime, he said. Let's go teach them what happens when you push peaceful people too far. His crew cheered. For the first time in 400 years, humanity was going on the offensive. And the galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. The Vthric thought they were gathering an overwhelming force. 3,000 ships seemed like more than enough to crush the upstart humans. What they didn't know was that Admiral Jiwoo Park was gathering her own fleet. And her fleet had been designed for exactly this kind of fight. Humanity wasn't just going to defend themselves. They were going to end this war before it really started. They were going to show the galaxy what 400 years of suppressed rage looked like when it was finally unleashed. The countdown had begun. In 96 hours, the Vthric homeworld would see human warships in their sky, and nothing would ever be the same again. Fleet Admiral Subin Han stood in the command center of the UES Vengeance, watching the holographic display of Vthric space. She was 42 years old and had spent her entire career planning for this moment. Not hoping for it, but planning for it. Because deep down, every human military officer knew that courtesy would only last so long. Admiral, the Vthric war fleet is gathering at Vthos Prime as expected. Her intelligence officer reported. 3,000 ships. They think they're setting a trap for us. Subin smiled. Let them think that. What's the status of our actual operation? 15 strike groups are in position. We're ready to hit their supply lines, manufacturing centers, and military installations simultaneously. This was the difference between how humanity fought and how the galaxy fought. The Vthric were gathering their fleet in one place, thinking that overwhelming numbers were the key to victory. Humanity knew better. You didn't win wars by having the biggest army. You won wars by destroying your enemy's ability to fight. Execute Operation Broken Chain, Subin ordered. Across Vthric space, 15 human fleets struck at once. They weren't large fleets, each one had maybe 20 ships. But they didn't need to be large. They were fast, precise, and absolutely ruthless. Captain Jaemin Oh led one of those strike groups. He was a special operations commander, trained in tactics that the galaxy would call dishonorable. Humanity called them effective. His ships appeared in the Kethron system, home to the Vthric's largest weapons manufacturing facility. The station in orbit was massive, protected by defensive platforms and a garrison fleet. Captain Jaemin didn't care. Target the reactor cores on those defensive platforms. Fire on my mark. His weapons officer looked nervous. Sir, if we destroy all of them at once, the debris field will destroy the garrison fleet's ability to maneuver. I know, fire. The defensive platforms exploded in sequence, creating a cloud of debris traveling at high velocity. The Vthric garrison ships tried to avoid it, breaking formation. That's when Jaemin's fighters struck, hitting them while they were disorganized. The manufacturing station tried to surrender, Jamin considered it for exactly 3 seconds. Denied. You built the weapons that killed our people at New Busousan. You don't get mercy. The station exploded. 10,000 Vthric workers died. Jamin felt nothing. This was war, and war wasn't about being nice. It was about making the enemy stop fighting. On Vthos Prime, High Command Vthos received report after report of attacks. 15 different systems all hit at once. Manufacturing destroyed. Supply depots burning. Military bases wiped out. How are they doing this? He roared at his subordinates. Their fleet is supposed to be coming here. Where are these ships coming from? His intelligence officer looked terrified. Sir, we've been monitoring human military movements for years. These ships, they were never on any of our reports. They don't match any human vessel we've seen before. That's impossible. Sir, I think we never knew how many ships they really had. Vthos felt cold fear settling into his gut. But he pushed it aside. He still had 3,000 ships. That had to be enough. Above Vthos Prime, Admiral Jiwoo Park's fleet dropped out of hyperspace. But it wasn't the massive armada the Vthric expected. It was only 200 ships. Vthos laughed when he saw the numbers. 200 ships against 3,000? They're insane. Destroy them. The Vthric fleet moved to engage. That's when they learned another lesson about how humans fought. Admiral Jiwoo didn't meet them in direct combat. Her fleet scattered, each group of ships moving in different directions, forcing the Vthric fleet to split up, and then the human ships stopped running. They turned and fought, but not in any way the Vthric understood. Human vessels moved in perfect coordination, creating crossfire zones where Vthric ships couldn't go without being hit from multiple angles. They used the planet's gravity well as a weapon, forcing Vthric ships to either break off or crash into the atmosphere. Dr. Bora Im watched the battle from the UES Indomitable. She was a xenopsychology specialist, and she'd spent years studying how different species thought about warfare. Now she was putting that knowledge to use. Target the command ships, she advised Admiral Jiwoo. Vthric military culture is hierarchical. Without their commanders, they panic. Jiwoo nodded. All ships prioritize vessels with command signatures. The Vthric fleet started falling apart. Their commanders were being killed faster than they could be replaced. Ships that had been following orders suddenly had no orders to follow. Some tried to retreat, others attacked wildly. None of it was coordinated. On the surface of Vthos Prime, something else was happening. Something the Vthric government didn't expect. Captain Jamin O and his team had infiltrated the planet weeks ago, disguised as traitors. Now they activated. They didn't attack military targets. They attacked the propaganda network. Within minutes, every screen on Vthos Prime was showing something the government had tried to hide. Footage of Vthric forces massacring civilians at New Busousan. Evidence of centuries of Vthric war crimes against other species. Proof that the Galactic Council had been protecting Vthric atrocities for generations. The Vthric people watched in horror. They'd been told that humanity was the aggressor, that the Dominion was defending itself. Now they saw the truth. Riots started in the capital. The people turned on their government. High Command Vthos watched his empire crumbling and realized he'd made a terrible mistake. Humanity wasn't just fighting a military campaign. They were fighting a war of information, psychology, and total destruction of the enemy's will to fight. A junior officer named Vrix Commander Ketheril watched the battle from his ship. He was one of the few Vthric commanders who understood what was happening. He'd studied human history, read about their wars. He'd tried to warn his superiors, but no one listened. Now he was watching his fleet being dismantled by an enemy that fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. He opened a channel to High Command. Sir, we need to surrender. They're not just beating us. They're showing the entire galaxy what happens when you push them too far. Never, Vthos screamed. The Dominion does not surrender to inferior. An explosion cut off the transmission. A human missile had found the bunker where High Command was hiding. Vthos was dead. Ketheril found himself in command of what remained of the Vthric fleet. He looked at his tactical display. Of 3,000 ships, fewer than 800 remained. The human fleet had lost 11 ships. He opened a channel to Admiral Jiwoo Park. Admiral, this is Vrix Commander Ketheril. I'm assuming command of Vthric forces. We surrender. Unconditionally. There was a long pause. Then Jiwoo's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired but satisfied. Surrender accepted. All Vthric vessels will power down weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any ship that tries to escape will be destroyed. Is that understood? Yes, Admiral. Good. And Commander Ketharal, you made the right choice. Your people are going to need leaders like you to rebuild. The Battle of Vthos Prime was over. It had lasted 6 hours. The mighty Vthric Dominion, which had terrorized its neighbors for centuries, had been crushed in less than a day. But the war wasn't over. Because while humanity was dealing with the Vthric, the Galactic Council was making its own plans. 15 species, angry at humanity's defiance, had formed a coalition. They claimed humanity was a threat to galactic peace. They said humans had to be stopped before they conquered everyone. It was all lies, of course. The truth was simpler. They were afraid. Ambassador Yuna Shin, who had replaced Hana Lee as Earth's representative, stood before the Galactic Council. She was young, only 35, but she had steel in her voice. "You're making a mistake," she said simply. "We didn't want this war. The Vthric started it. We finished it. We have no interest in conquest. We just want to be left alone." "Then disarm," a council member demanded. "Prove you're peaceful," Yuna laughed. It was a cold sound. For 400 years we were disarmed. You called it peace. We called it slavery. Never again. We will keep our weapons. We will keep our ships. And if you try to force us to give them up, you'll end up like the Vthric. Is that a threat? It's a promise. We tried being weak. We tried following your rules. We tried begging for justice. You gave us nothing. So now we make our own justice. And if you don't like it, you're welcome to try stopping us. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. 15 species voted to authorize military action against humanity. 42,000 ships began gathering at the edge of human space. On Earth, Admiral Jiwoo Park received the intelligence reports. 42,000 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history, all of them coming to force humanity back into submission. She called a meeting of her senior commanders. Captain Daewon Kim was there, Fleet Admiral Subin Han, General Sung Ho Bae, Captain Jaemin Oh, Commander Hyun-Soo Jang. All of them had proven themselves against the Vthric. "They're coming with everything they have," Jiwoo said. 42,000 ships from 15 species. They think numbers will be enough. "How many ships can we field?" Daewon asked. 6,000. The room was quiet. 6,000 against 42,000. 7-to-1 odds, Daewon smiled. "I've seen worse," the others laughed. They'd all seen what humanity could do when pushed. They'd spent their entire lives preparing for this. The coalition fleet gathered at Rally Point Meridian, just outside human space. 42,000 ships from 15 different species, each one thinking they were on the right side of history. Their commanders held a joint meeting, broadcast across the fleet. Selvix Prime, a crystalline being chosen to lead the coalition, addressed them all. "We are here to restore order to the galaxy. Humanity has shown itself to be aggressive and dangerous. Today we will teach them that the galaxy will not tolerate their violence." On the bridge of his flagship, a commander from one of the smaller coalition species looked nervous. "Sir, the Vthric had 3,000 ships. Humanity destroyed them in hours. Are we sure about this?" Selvix's crystalline form glowed with confidence. "The Vthric were arrogant and unprepared. We are neither. We have 14 times their numbers. Even humans cannot overcome those odds." But in the hangar bay of that same ship, soldiers were having a different conversation. They'd seen the recordings from Vthos Prime. They'd watched human ships move in ways that shouldn't be possible. They'd seen human tactics that made no sense until suddenly you were dead. "I don't want to be here," one soldier whispered to another. "Fighting pirates is one thing. Fighting humans is suicide. Keep your voice down. We have orders." "Orders to die, you mean?" Admiral Jiwoo Park watched the coalition fleet on her sensors. 6,000 human ships were spread across multiple positions, waiting. They looked outnumbered and outgunned. That was intentional. "They think we'll meet them in open battle," she said to her staff. "They're wrong." Captain Yoonji Cho commanded a destroyer wing, 28 ships designed for speed and precision. She was 33 years old and had studied every major fleet battle in human history. She knew something the coalition didn't. Numbers only mattered if you could use them effectively. "All ships, execute pattern Delta," she ordered. Her destroyers moved toward the coalition fleet, then suddenly scattered in 16 different directions. The coalition fleet split up to chase them, breaking their formation. That's when the trap closed. Human ships that had been hiding behind asteroids and debris fields opened fire. The coalition had been so focused on Unji's destroyers that they'd walked right into an ambush. 3,000 coalition ships were destroyed in the first 5 minutes. Selvix couldn't believe what his sensors were telling him. How did they hide that many ships? Our sensors should have detected them. His sensor officer looked pale. Sir, they weren't hiding. They were using stealth technology we didn't know they had, and their weapons range is much longer than our intelligence suggested. We're being hit from distances that should be impossible. The battle had barely started, and the coalition was already in trouble. Their commanders tried to reorganize, but human ships kept hitting and running, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted effectively. General Wu Jin Ryu watched the battle from Earth's command center. He was 53 years old and had spent decades studying not just military strategy but psychology. He knew that wars were won in the mind as much as on the battlefield. "Start the broadcast," he ordered. Across the coalition fleet, every communication system was suddenly hijacked. Screens showed coalition casualties updating in real time. 3,000 dead, 4,000, 5,000. The numbers kept climbing. Then came recordings of coalition commanders talking privately about how they were using smaller species as cannon fodder, how they planned to seize human technology for themselves after the war, how they'd lied to their own people about why they were fighting. On one coalition ship, soldiers watched the broadcast and realized they'd been betrayed. They weren't fighting for galactic peace. They were fighting for the same corrupt system that had oppressed everyone for centuries. The first defection happened 12 hours into the battle. 2 coalition species withdrew their fleets, refusing to continue. Selvix tried to stop them, even ordered his ships to fire on the deserters. That made things worse. 3 more species pulled out, horrified that the coalition was shooting its own members. Commander Do Hyun Song was the intelligence officer responsible for the psychological warfare campaign. He was 41 years old and had spent years infiltrating coalition communications. Now he released his final weapon, proof that the Galactic Council had been manipulating the coalition species, planning to steal their resources after humanity was defeated. The coalition began falling apart. Ships that had been allies started firing on each other. Species accused each other of being council puppets. The carefully organized fleet descended into chaos. Admiral Jiwoo Park watched the dissolution with satisfaction. Humanity didn't need to defeat 42,000 ships. We just needed to make them defeat themselves. But not all coalition species retreated. 7 species, the most aggressive and expansionist in the council, refused to give up. They had 19,000 ships left, and they were absolutely determined to destroy humanity. "They're regrouping," her tactical officer reported. "New heading. They're going for Earth." Jiwoo felt ice in her veins. "They're going to try to destroy our homeworld. They think if they take Earth, we'll surrender." Captain Daewon Kim, commanding a defense fleet near Jupiter, received the alert. The coalition was coming to the Sol system, coming for Earth itself. "All human forces fall back to Sol," Admiral Jiwoo ordered. "We're going to make our stand at home." The coalition fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system 72 hours later. They'd been fighting for weeks, losing ships every day, but they had 19,000 vessels left. They were confident that sheer numbers would overwhelm Earth's defenses. They were wrong. As the coalition fleet crossed into the Sol system, they triggered the first layer of defenses. What they thought was empty space turned out to be filled with mines, thousands of them, hidden using the same stealth technology that had surprised them before. 2,000 coalition ships were destroyed before they even saw Earth. The survivors pressed on, determined to reach the human homeworld. They passed Mars, and that's when the next surprise hit them. Mars launched fighters. Not dozens, not hundreds. Tens of thousands of fighters, each one piloted by someone defending their home system. Commander Hyun-Soo Jang, now a captain, led one fighter wing. "Remember your training," she called to her pilots. "They're scared, tired, and far from home. We're defending our families. Show them what that means." The human fighters swarmed the coalition fleet like angry bees. They didn't try to destroy the massive capital ships directly. They targeted sensors, weapons, communications. They made the coalition fleet blind, deaf, and unable to coordinate. Captain Daewon Kim's fleet waited at Jupiter. The coalition had to pass through his position to reach Earth. He had 300 ships. The coalition had 15,000. But Daewon had something they didn't. He knew every trick of fighting in the Jupiter system. Use the radiation belts, he ordered. Lead them into the zones where their shields won't work. Human ships designed to operate in harsh conditions lured Coalition vessels into Jupiter's deadly radiation zones. Coalition shields failed. Their crews started dying from radiation exposure. They tried to retreat, but human ships cut off their escape. The Coalition fleet that had seemed so unstoppable was being torn apart. But they were close to Earth now, close enough to see it on their screens. A beautiful blue world that they'd been sent to conquer. That's when Earth showed them its final secret. The moon, humanity's ancient companion, opened hidden bays. Weapons platforms emerged, bigger than any ship in the Coalition fleet. They'd been built over 400 years, hidden in plain sight, waiting for this exact moment. The weapons fired. They weren't normal lasers or missiles. They were weapons that humanity had developed in secret, technologies the galaxy had never seen. One shot could destroy a capital ship. The moon had thousands of them. But even as the Coalition fleet died, they still had 5,000 ships left. 5,000 ships against Earth's final defense grid. Selvix, his crystalline form cracked and damaged, gave one last order. All ships target Earth directly. If we're going to die, we'll take their homeworld with us. Admiral Jiwoo Park stood in Earth's command center, watching the Coalition make their final push. She thought about her career, about all the years of following rules that didn't make sense, about watching her people suffer while she could do nothing. Not anymore. Activate Protocol Final Mercy, she ordered quietly. Around Earth, weapon systems activated that made the moon's platforms look like toys, hidden in orbit, buried in asteroids, concealed in space stations. Humanity's ultimate deterrent came online. Admiral, her weapons officer said nervously, if we fire these, the Coalition fleet will be completely destroyed. No survivors, I know, Jiwoo said, but they came to our home. They came to kill our families. They made their choice. Now we make ours. Fire. The space around Earth lit up like a new sun. When the light faded, the Coalition fleet was gone. All 5,000 ships, destroyed in seconds. Across the galaxy, every species with sensors pointed at Sol system saw what happened. They saw what humanity had been hiding. They saw what happened when you threatened Earth itself. Selvix Prime's last transmission was simple. We were wrong. They're not dangerous because they're violent. They're dangerous because they know exactly how much force to use and when to use it. 6 months after the Coalition War ended, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The old Galactic Council had collapsed, its members arrested or fled into hiding. Species that had been suppressed for centuries were finally free to speak their minds. Ambassador Hana Lee walked through the halls of the new Galactic Assembly building. She was 70 now, her hair completely white, but her eyes were still sharp. She'd returned to help build something better than what had come before. The Assembly was different from the old Council. Every species had a vote. No one species could control the others. It was messy, loud, and sometimes chaotic. Hana loved it. This was what democracy looked like. She entered the main chamber where representatives from 100 species were arguing about the new galactic laws. At the center of the debate was a simple question. What role would humanity play in this new galaxy? Chancellor Sang-woo Park, Earth's head of government, addressed the assembly. He was 60 years old with a diplomat's smile and a soldier's eyes. We didn't fight for control, he said. We fought for respect. We fought for the right to defend ourselves. We fought so that no species would have to spend 400 years being pushed around like we were. A representative from one of the former Coalition species stood up. But you have the power now. You could dominate all of us. How do we know you won't? Sang-woo was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because we remember what it was like to be powerless. We remember every injustice, every humiliation. Every time we begged for help and got nothing. We won't become what we hated. Not everyone believed him. Some species looked at humanity's military might and saw a future tyrant, but others, the ones who had also suffered under the old council, saw something different. They saw hope. Dr. Tae-young Choi was leading a different kind of project. The Truth Commission, they called it. Its job was to investigate everything the old council had hidden. The corruption, the lies, the atrocities ignored or enabled. What they found was worse than anyone expected. The council hadn't just been unfair. They'd been actively evil. They'd allowed genocide to happen when it was convenient. They'd sold out entire species for profit. They'd suppressed anyone who might challenge their power. Humanity wasn't the only species they feared. Taiyang told a gathering of historians. There were dozens of others. Species with unique abilities, innovative cultures, or just the bad luck of having resources the council wanted. They were all pushed down, kept weak, prevented from reaching their potential. He showed records of other species who had asked for justice, just like humanity had. Species who had been ignored just like humanity. Species who had given up hope. But humanity didn't give up, Taiyang continued. We waited. We prepared. And when we finally acted, we broke the system that was oppressing everyone. That's why so many species supported us in the end. Not because they loved humanity, but because they hated the council. The Vthric Dominion was going through its own transformation. The new government, led by Vric's commander Ketheril, was trying to make amends for centuries of aggression. It wasn't easy. Many Vthric citizens were angry about their defeat. Others were ashamed of what their government had done. Ketheril met with Admiral Jiwoo Park on neutral ground. He looked different from the last time they'd spoken. Less proud, more tired, warded that to people. My people are struggling, he admitted. Half of them want revenge. The other half want to pretend none of this happened. No one wants to face the truth, Jiwoo nodded. Earth went through something similar a long time ago, after our world wars. It takes time, generations maybe, but it's possible to change. Will you help us? Jiwoo considered this. The Vthric had killed thousands of humans. They'd started a war that killed millions across the galaxy. By all rights, humanity should leave them to suffer the consequences. But that wasn't who humanity wanted to be. Yes, she said finally. We'll help. Not because you deserve it, but because the galaxy needs to see that we're serious about building something better. Not everyone in the galaxy was ready to accept the new order. 3 species that had been part of the coalition refused to sign the Assembly Charter. They retreated to their home systems and closed their borders. They claimed they were protecting their sovereignty, but everyone knew the truth. They were preparing for another war. Admiral Jiwoo Park, now Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces, monitored them carefully. She was older now, in her early 60s, and she'd seen enough war to last a lifetime. But she knew that peace had to be defended. They're building up their fleets again, her intelligence officer reported. Not as fast as before, but they're definitely preparing for something. Let them, Jiwoo said. We'll watch. We'll prepare, but we won't strike first. That's the difference between us and the old council. We only fight when we have to. Captain Daewon Kim had retired from active service, but the military kept pulling him back for one more mission. Now he ran the new Galactic Military Academy, training officers from dozens of species in human tactics and strategy. His students came from everywhere, former enemies, current allies, species that had never fought a war before. He treated them all the same. Fighting is easy, he told a class of mixed species cadets. Any fool can pull a trigger. What's hard is knowing when to fight and when not to. Humanity spent 400 years not fighting when we wanted to. That restraint was harder than any battle. A young Vthric cadet raised his hand. Sir, how do you forgive? My species killed your people. How can you teach us now? Daewon looked at the cadet for a long moment. I don't forgive your government. But you're not your government. You're a kid trying to learn, and if I can teach you to be better than your leaders were, then maybe their deaths meant something. The Galactic Assembly was working on a new set of laws. Representative Kyungmi Nam, a human diplomat in her 40s, led the committee. The laws were designed to prevent another council from forming, to ensure that no species could dominate the others. It won't be perfect, she told the assembly. No system is. But it will be better than what we had. And if it stops working, we'll fix it. That's what democracy means. The laws passed with overwhelming support. For the first time in galactic history, every species had equal rights under law. Military power was regulated. Trade was fair. Disputes would be resolved through arbitration, not violence. Of course, enforcing these laws required someone to do it. The Assembly created the Galactic Defense Force, a coalition military drawn from multiple species. And at humanity's insistence, it was commanded by a rotating council, not a single species. But everyone knew the truth. If the defense force failed, if someone broke the peace, humanity would respond. That was the unspoken guarantee. The galaxy had peace because humanity was strong enough to defend it. On Earth, a monument was being built. It listed the names of every human who had died during the 423 years of courtesy. Colonists killed by raiders, miners murdered for their claims. Civilians massacred in wars they didn't start. 400 years of patient suffering. Hana Lee stood at the monument's dedication ceremony. She was the last surviving member of the old diplomatic corps, the ones who had spent their careers begging the council for justice. "We waited so long," she said to the crowd. "Some people say we should have fought sooner, that we were cowards for accepting the council's rules. But I don't believe that. Patience isn't cowardice. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you can do." She touched the monument, running her fingers over the names. So many names. "We tried everything else first," she continued. "We tried diplomacy. We tried compromise. We tried following their rules perfectly, thinking that would make them treat us fairly. Nothing worked. So finally we did what we had to do, and we did it right." The crowd was silent. They understood what she meant. Humanity hadn't just won a war. They'd won it while maintaining their principles. They'd used overwhelming force but hadn't become monsters. They'd defeated their enemies but hadn't committed genocide. They'd seized power but hadn't become tyrants. It was a narrow path to walk, and they hadn't always succeeded perfectly. Mistakes had been made. People had died who shouldn't have. But compared to what the galaxy had been, this new order was paradise. Dr. Tae-Yang Choi, now in his 50s, wrote the definitive history of the period. His book was called The Long Courtesy, and it became required reading across the galaxy. In it, he wrote, "Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or tactics. It was memory. We remembered every injustice. We learned from every defeat, and when the time came, we used that knowledge to reshape the galaxy. Future species will study this period and ask, how did humanity do it? The answer is simple. We were patient when we had to be. We were ruthless when we needed to be, and we never forgot who we were fighting for." 100 years after the Coalition War, humanity had become the galaxy's reluctant guardians. They didn't rule the galaxy, the Assembly did that. But everyone knew that if someone threatened the peace, human ships would respond. A new generation of officers graduated from the academy. Captain Hyun-Soo Jang, now Admiral Jang, gave the commencement speech. She was 63 years old and had fought in every major battle of the wars. "You're the guardians now," she told the graduates. "You'll protect a peace that we fought to create.